What's going on, guys? So one of the most common parts I go through in my truck are idler pulleys. Idler pulleys sit in your engine bay and they run along your serpentine belt. Your serpentine belt is that long belt that if you pop your hood you'll see right in your engine compartment there. And what the serpentine belt does is it harnesses the engine's power and it transfers that power via belt to various components that your car or truck needs to run smoothly. For example, it runs your water pump, it runs your AC compressor, power steering pump, your alternator, things along those lines. So it's important to have a smooth running serpentine belt in order for everything to work smoothly and properly, and that way you're not draining excess engine power on parts that are worn down. So yes, so idlers go bad. Common way for you to tell if an idler goes bad is if while the truck's running, you see it go from side to side. Also, if you hear a squeaking or grinding sound, chances are you have a bad idler, but it also could be one of your other components. So to pinpoint that it is in fact an idler, what you need to do is remove your serpentine belt, and then you can spin these idler pulleys and you can rock them from side to side. And what you're looking for, if it's a good part, it'll be smooth, you won't hear any sounds, maybe very slight resistance if it has a new bearing. That's completely normal. If it's squeaking or grinding or moving from side to side, you have a bad bearing, and it's actually really simple to replace these idler pulleys. All they do is simply unbolt off the engine block, and be careful when you retorque them down not to over torque them, because chances are it's getting bolted into an aluminum head. I think they only get like 18 foot-pounds of torque. But yeah, so commonly, or what I've done in the past is whenever I need a new one, I'll just go down to AutoZone, hey, I need a new smooth idler, give them my truck information, and it normally ends up costing anywhere between $18 to $35 for this part. So I got sick and tired of paying that $18 to $35 for my idlers, so I had to give credit where it's due. I watched this guy, Andrew Carmada, on YouTube, and he does a lot of his own advanced auto mechanics, and I'm very intrigued by his methods. And in one of his videos, he simply changed out the bearings. Why didn't I think of that? So I went on Amazon, bought a 10-pack of bearings. The 10-pack cost me we'll say $15. And it was on Prime, so it got shipped right to my door. So I have 10 new bearings for $15. So I've already knocked out the old bearings, and that was very simple. I just took a large socket and put 2 pieces of steel on either side of this idler pulley, and I just knocked out the old bearing. And what I'm going to do tonight is I'm just going to put in some new bearings in these parts. This is just a smooth idler, and this is also my belt tensioner. The bearing inside this belt tensioner went bad, and I had to buy a new belt tensioner, which isn't the end of the world. Over time, these belt tensioners do go bad. There's a series of springs in here that apply torque and put pressure on your serpentine belt to keep it taut. Mind you, this will vary from car to truck to, every vehicle is likely a little bit different. But there was really nothing wrong with this one, so I'm going to put a new bearing on here, and then I'll have a spare belt tensioner. So I have a couple of the new bearings sitting in the freezer right now, and people say that it's a good idea to cool the bearings, put them in the freezer for a couple hours. That way the molecules on the bearing shrink. That way when you go to install it in the pulley, it will slide in smoother. Say for example, if I were to take a room temperature bearing and try to hammer it down in there, the idea behind it, or the theory, is that there will be more friction. It will be more difficult to get it in there because the molecules are at room temperature. And of course, when you cool something down, the molecules contract, so therefore it should go in there a bit easier. But before I put those new bearings in there, I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper, and simply what I'm going to do is just clean up the inside of this a little bit, just in case there's any burrs or anything that I'm missing, any grease, any grime. It'll get all that out of there. So when I go to put this new bearing in there, it should go in very smoothly. That looks good. Do the same thing on the other side. Now ideally it would be best if you have a press to press these new bearings in there. I don't have a press, unfortunately. What I do have is an aluminum set of bearing and seal drivers, and this is my kit right here. I absolutely love this kit. So the smallest drive is the same diameter of the bearings, so I'm simply going to go get the bearings sitting in the freezer, and I'm just going to lightly tap these in here, and we'll see how well this goes. Should be pretty smooth. Alright, so here are the bearings that have been sitting in the freezer. As you can see, they are nice and frosty. I have my punch ready to go, and let's see how this goes. Try going from the back side. I think I actually went a little bit too far, so I'm going to punch it back in the other direction. Right, that's perfectly in line. That was very smooth. Do the same thing for this belt tensioner. And I would say one more hit. One more hit. Maybe two. And I would say that's about perfect. Alright, so again, if you do decide to freeze your bearings in order for them to slide into these idlers a bit easier, just make sure you allow them time to gradually warm up to room temperature before you run them on your engine. Here's another thing to watch out for. I did my best to make sure that this new bearing was in the same spot that the old bearing was. It'd be a good idea to take a picture, or when you plan to replace these bearings, knock them out and then have the new bearings ready to go. That way, you know, it's kind of fresh in your mind exactly where they sit. Which that's probably something I should have done, but oh well. And why that's important is if you look at this idler, you see the shiny part, that's where the belt had been riding. Now if we punch this bearing too far in or too far out, that may alter where the belt sits. So when you go to reinstall this on your truck or car and you put the new belt over this and you start the engine for the first time, make sure you get a good look at this and make sure the belt is riding in the same spot, or if it's not riding in the exact same spot, make sure that the belt is completely on this idler. Make sure it's not off to the side. You want to try and leave it as centered as possible. You definitely don't want your belt right on the edge. You want it centered. So that's basically what I'm trying to say, but punch and bolt these in here. Everything went very smooth. No damage to the bearings whatsoever. If you do plan to attempt this project, a press would be the ideal way to go, but if you don't have a press, I can't recommend enough getting a good seal or bearing punch set like I have here. I'll leave a link in the description below of the set I have. But what's important is when you're punching in a new bearing, you want to do little taps and gradually tap it in, but more importantly, you want something that spreads out the tap or your punches evenly throughout this bearing. You want to put the same amount of pressure on the outer ring as well as the inner ring. If I were to go and just hammer this down with a socket, I can guarantee you I would do damage to this because I'm not putting even pressure on both rings. So, well, thanks for watching. Hopefully this video will save everybody some money out there. And again, one of the great things about doing this in terms of buying just a 10-pack of bearings is next time these things go out, I don't have to kill an hour going to the auto parts store. In addition, I'm saving money. I got the bearings right here. Just take the old idler off, knock it out, put the new bearing in. I'm good to go. If you guys like this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up and subscribe for more.